Ladies and gentlemen, we've got quite the video in store for ourselves today. We've got Jello Impact over here, who is a pretty prominent Genshin CC, who, in my opinion, is on top of the meta when it comes to Genshin Impact. They're constantly releasing videos about, like, pull guides, so on and so forth, the viability of certain characters, viability of older ones. I would dare say, right, he makes very similar content to what I do for Wuthering Waves. And he's come out with a pretty crazy title over here. Genshin is not free-to-play friendly anymore. Now what? And, well, coming from the guy, right? Coming from the guy that has all of the info when it comes to meta and team building, that's a pretty crazy statement to make. Coming from the guy that's on top of the meta and team building, that's a pretty crazy statement to make. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Let's get right on into it and see why he's making these takes.
Genshin Impact has historically been one of the most free-to-play friendly gacha games on the market. In recent times, however, things have gotten less and less friendly for the low and no spenders.
I've been sharing this take. Genshin Impact, without a doubt, has become a game where HP inflation, damage ceilings of teams, have risen through the roof in not even a year. Mavuik and Sitlali basically took the structure of the game, flipped it on its fucking head, and Natlan kind of ruined it all. And that only started in January of this year, and we're only in basically October at this point.
So in this video, we're going to go over exactly why, what has changed over the history of Genshin, and how to make the most of your account, even if you are a low spender or free to play. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build.
This is going to be a great video because naturally, right, I haven't really been caught up on the Genshin meta in the longest amount of time. I think the last character that I ended up pulling was like Skirk and Escoffier, just to do testing and see how bad the power creep in the game has gotten. And so, I know, I'm kind of putting myself in the shoes of like a low budget player and, you know, just hearing from the source. How fucked am I? W sponsor.
In this video, I am going to call it like I see it. Not being negative, I think Genshin is in the best state overall, total package, total fun, story, world, characters, the best state it's ever been. And
interesting. It's in the best state it's ever been, and this is where I'll be a little bit more balanced, right, with the overall review. It's no doubt at all that there's been quite a lot of individuals who are very happy, right, with Nodcry, who are very happy with where the story's going, happy with all that other stuff. So I'm not going to go ahead and, like, yuck his yum over here, you know, be like, oh, this is, like, illegitimate, this is ridiculous, this is, like, this is not true at all. Again, this is his personal take on the game, and it's also his personal take on the game that it's now pay to play.
Even if it's less free-to-play friendly, I think it is the most fun it's ever been, at least it is for me.
Because he spends money on the game. That's probably the main thing. I'm pretty sure he pulls every single character. I'm pretty sure he has a fair number of signature weapons, all of that. Obviously, if that's not true, then I will take those words back, but I would assume the guy that is making meta content on every single character has every single character,
in my opinion. So I'm going to be pretty raw. I'm going to be pretty critical of the free-to-play friendliness and lack thereof in the current state of the game, because that's how it is. But it's still my favorite game. If you can't handle the heat, get to the kitchen. You've been warned. So I wanted to go over the history, looking at the launch of Genshin Impact and looking at how the meta evolved over time, so you can see what I mean when I say that it used to be so free-to-play friendly and now it's so not. But not just because of the reasons you think it is, but I'll explain. At launch,
I agree with that take. Genshin was without a doubt, I think up until version like late version maybe 4.8, 4.7, it was literally, I think, the most free-to-play friendly game on the gacha market. Because you could just use all of your older characters, all of your stuff in all of the endgame content. Literally, you were using Hu Tao teams, a 1.0 DPS, in version 4.x Abysses. Then they doubled the HP in 1 year.
Obviously, we know the most broken characters in the game were 4 stars. They were Bennett, Fischl, Xingqiu.
That too. Very, very strong set of Li Wei and Bennett 4 stars.
Xiangling, Sucrose, and of course there were some early game heroes, Noelle, and Beto was good at the time, etc. Kaya, Changyan had some use, even Lisa, maybe Sumeru could be used more. Some of the standard banner characters were pretty good, and they've been buffed and gone up and down in value over the years.
My opinion, version 4.1, or around that time when they released Farina, was like the golden era of the game. She literally brought characters like Jean to the top of the meta in terms of performance. She felt like reverse power creep from the perspective of her release made a bunch of older units way stronger. And that's why I considered version 4.x of Genshin to literally be the best state that the game had ever been. Story-wise, meta-wise, all of that. And then to see them throw it all away in less than a year was just such a complete letdown.
But here's why the 4 stars at launch were so much more free-to-play friendly then than they are now, because even the 4 stars are not free-to-play friendly the way they used to be. At launch,
the 4 stars are not as free-to-play friendly as they used to be. What?
These were the only 4 stars in the game. So when you got a copy of a 4 star, you were most likely getting a copy of one of these characters.
And so now if you're a new free-to-play starting, imagine how long it's going to take you to get a C6 Bennett, a C6 Xingqiu, a Xingqiu.
Well, you were. Either that or you were getting a weapon. And as such, you were getting tons of constellations for these characters. And
this is a really, really great point. And this is also the other thing, guys. That's also why I don't push for new 4 stars in Wuthering Waves. Unless they are really, really, really necessary. Because think about it this way. Lads, how do you feel when you have a, let's just say that Sanhua and Mortefi are on banner, and so is this unit. How pissed off would you be if you were a newer player and you got her? You know how strong Sanhua and Mortefi are, right? These are the 2 best 4-star units in the game, bar none. You want to know what the upcoming 4-star roster is for 2.7's first half? It's these 2 and then Lumi. And Lumi is so much worse than those other 2, it's insane. And when you add in a bunch of extra 4 stars like Genshin Impact, how they have a bunch of garbage on the roster, well, guys, that reduces your chance of actually getting the good units. And if you're a newer player, you would way rather have these 2 and copies of these 2, especially with how strong their S6 is, right? Absolutely nuts. You would rather have copies of these units than anything else. So don't dilute the pool with garbage like Yo or Lumi.
Yeah, Bennett only really needs his C1, but he still benefits a lot all the way up until his C5 and even his C6 for pyro teams. Fischl benefits all the way up to her C6. Xingqiu takes massive L's if he doesn't have his C6.
Yep.
Xiangling takes...
I think C6 doubles his hydro application. I think Xingqiu C6 almost doubles his hydro application. Which, in a game where application is very key to enable shit like Vaporize, that's kind of fucking important.
Takes massive L's if she doesn't have her C4. Kaya loves his constellations, although no one really ever got those because he wasn't on limited banners. Beto needs...
This is a great video because you can literally see what like the growth pains are in the units and how those exact pains can occur in Wuthering Waves without proper management by Kuro and the team.
Needs her constellations, like lots of these characters. Sucrose doesn't really. It used to be really good, her C1 and even her C6 and aggravate teams sometimes. Nowadays, her constellations don't matter as much, but that is the exception rather than the rule. You could not just get, you know, a Xingqiu out of the gate and have him been doing everything. You needed constellations, and you still do, to have him really perform at potential, and that's the case for a lot of 4 stars, but the 4-star cast has gotten so massive, and there's still no guarantees to getting 4 stars. I've made so many videos on the 4-star problem, and Genshin has still done nothing about it. You want to get your C6 Kujo Sara,
Go fuck yourself.
Too bad, never gonna happen. You pulled on Lauma, but
Go fuck yourself.
you didn't get a single copy of Kuki, you wanted her C2, too bad, no guarantees. Not in the shop. No way to get her. Sucks to be you. Okay.
I'm just saying how he truly feels. He's marinating his words. He's being friendly. But essentially, that's the core message. GFY.
So that's the 4-star situation and how it's gotten so much less free-to-play friendly over time. But the other...
I say this as a C6 Farazan owner, and now you can't play any of your teams in the endgame because everything has an elemental shield. Yeah, I'm still regretting that.
situation is of supports. Zhongli was unironically one of the best supports at launch, as was Sucrose, Jean, Bennett, all the ones I've talked about, but everything changed when the Kazuha attacked. Illumination, whatever. Kazuha, if you were around during the time that Kazuha came out, and
this guy's so strong that Hoyo purposefully only runs him like once a year. Literally. He was a broken ass 1.x unit that's so strong they only run him once a year.
In the year plus following,
and he like breaks records every time because he's just broken.
Single showcase was using this character. I think aside from Eula, literally every single character's best team in the game, aside from Sweaty, Sucrose, min-maxing, was with Kazuha. And over time, grouping became more and more important, and Kazuha became always the better choice over Sucrose. And so it didn't matter if you're
and Venti.
playing Hu Tao, Ganyu,
the Archon.
Okay, Xiao didn't use Kazuha, and that's one of the reasons why I started falling off. But Tartaglia, Klee, D-Luke, it didn't matter who were you using. And then the new DPSs, Ayaka, Yoimiya, Raiden, everyone except for Ito, used Kazuha as the best team. So, why is that so free-to-play friendly? Well, you could just pick up one copy of Kaidehara Kazuha, and your account is set. One of your teams is done. And don't forget that if you had Venti, Venti was pretty broken as well. You could use him on the other side, you could use Sucrose on the other side. You were just done. And the power ceiling at the time was much, much lower. So if you just put together some synergistic teams, it didn't really matter how good your team was, because the bar was on the floor for DPS requirements. It did not matter what you played. As long as you picked up a Kazuha, you're going to have an easy time clearing. And because the Spiral Abyss uses both of your times on both sides, Kazuha would make one of your sides really good, and so the other one, even if it was kind of mid, was still be able to be carried by the good clear that you got with Kazuha. So
I think a similar analogy that you can make to Wuthering Waves is actually the release of this character over here. Let me show you all. She feels very similar to the Kazuha of Wuthering Waves, but she's not nearly as strong as he was. From the perspective of, it's not like you put in SK and then the team that originally had Verena is like dealing double the damage. That's essentially what it was like. Not really double, but significantly higher. Having Kazuha on your team raise your damage a lot. Not as much as like Shorekeeper over Verena or Shorekeeper over Baija, but she's as close to as generalistic as he is. And this is the thing. She didn't raise the ceilings that much. And now you have, like, tailored supports coming in. You got, like, Arrow Rover for Cartithia. You've got, like, Spectral Rover for the Zani teams. And those raise the damage ceilings a little bit higher. But it's not like you're at the point, right, where, okay, a Zani with a Shorekeeper is, like, way worse than a Zani with a Spectral Rover. It's not like the triple fusion team, you know, if you replace Chang Li with, like, a Shorekeeper or something like that, is, like, 30 times weaker. The damage ceiling does get raised by having like the full triple lineup, but it's not like Shorekeeper was like an incredible rise in power levels overall. It's just you can put her on basically every single team in the game and get meta level performance, which is why she's the #1 recommended free to play pick for pretty much every single account. That's why she's on the beginner banner and everyone can guarantee her after they start the game. So yeah, very unlike Mr. Kaedehara Kazuha running once every fucking year.
So, time goes on. How long is Kazuha the best in slot support? You only need 2 teams, remember, at the time. So let's say you pulled some new DPSs. Let's say you pulled some new characters. You're still using Kazuha. Remember, most of these characters are using...
Hasn't Shorekeeper reran like 3 times? Brother, if you wanted Shorekeeper, you have gotten her. I don't know what else to say. She's ran so many times, has like a selector, has... If you want her, you have her. There's actually no excuse for people not to have her at this point. Because it's just, she's been almost too available.
Using Kazuha as their best DPS. You pull an Ayaka. Oh, good, you already have her best support. You pull Yoimiya. Oh, good, you already have her best support. You pull Raiden. You pull Kokomi. You already have their best support. Ito the exception. Yaimiku, you already have her best support. Ayato, you already have his best support. Yelan, she's another broken support. And she stayed a broken support for so long. She's still a good support, to be fair, but she was on so many of the meta teams that if you picked up a Kazuha and a Yelan, your account was basically saved. You didn't need anything else, because then we're in the Sumeru meta, and you just pick up a Nahida, you're picking up one character per version, and you are getting the meta team with just one character. And not only that, the DPS ceiling didn't really rise all that much in Sumeru. Yes, Hyperbloom was the overall best team in the game because of the ease of use, and it was pretty close to the DPS ceilings of most of the cast. Maybe not the very highest possible, but pretty darn close.
Hyperbloom was just some brainless shit. I will say that. Hyperbloom kind of seems like a... You definitely don't run Kazuha, right? On your Hyperbloom teams, and they basically all did the same exact damage as running Kazuha on your Vaporize or your Freeze teams, all of that, right? It was mainly like an Electro fix to finally make the element not feel like shit. So, yeah, I mean, again, the game was in incredibly well-balanced state across the majority of its lifespan. So yeah, this is like all 3.x stuff.
And very easy. And so now you've got a Hyperbloom team, you've got a Kazuha team, you've got Yelan on either your Hyperbloom or your Kazuha team, and you've got a fallback. It doesn't matter how trash your other pulls are.
I'm gonna be honest. Currently, I do believe if you're looking at the limited roster in Wuthering Waves, quite honestly, the best overall support that works with the most DPSs might actually be Chakota. I'm not even joking. The number of teams that you can run with this unit, because you have a combination with Arrow Rover, is legitimately actually almost insane. You run Arrow Rover, right, who has their built-in amplification on their sword, with the Arrow unit, who buffs arrow damage in her kit, you end up being able to run Arrow Rover Chakota with Kartithia, right? You also get to run Arrow Rover Chakota, main DPS. Then you can run Arrow Rover Chakona, Gion DPS, and then you can switch out Arrow Rover for and also run Gion DPS there as well. You basically got like 3+ meta teams that you're able to run because you pulled Chakona, and you're guaranteed to have the second member of the team, Arrow Rover. I'm not even joking. She actually has surprisingly turned out to be one of the most valuable characters in the game. Oh, I forgot. She can also apply Spectral Frazzle too and make Phoebe playable in Whimpering Wastes. You can also technically run her on some Spectral Frazzle teams, though the Spectral Frazzle teams that have her are the worst. This is also the thing. It's not like she's out here breaking the game either. It's not like her teams are going in and then dealing the most absurd damage compared to every other one. So yeah, she currently is one of the most flexible units in the game for sure.
You are able to 36-star just from pulling those characters. Because yeah, there's a bunch of Sumeru stuff, but none of this stuff was particularly crazy. It was very skippable. As long as you picked up Nahida, you were good, and if you had Yelan and Kazuha. So yeah.
Sumeru was, without a doubt, the era of the game with the worst 5 stars, though. Like, meta-wise, Sumeru had some actual dog shit characters. Let me just show you the ones that are dog shit. Wanderer was dog shit. Baiju is dog shit. Dea is Dea. Sino is fucking trash. Right? It's like, they just had a lot of really bad units. Like, really bad 5 stars. Like, awful, terrible.
Everything stayed very relevant, and then we move into Fontaine, where we get Neuvillette. Sure, he was a broken character, and yes, he really did want Furina, but you're getting Furina anyways. She's the Archon. He's still using Kazuha. A bunch of other characters, Navia, Wriothesley still using Yelan on a bunch of teams. Wriothesley not until later, but...
You wanna know why Wriothesley came back to the meta? Because he dealt the same type of damage as Skirk. And so, they shielded Skirk in the endgame, and then Wriothesley just got to benefit from the Skirk shilling. That's the only time he's been meta, is because of another limited character that came out.
But Navia. But things start to get interesting as we get characters like Chevreuse creating a whole new team archetype, but she's a 4-star and she gets a big power spike at C6.
And an insane power spike at C6. And we just talked about earlier in the video, right? How hard it is to get C6 4 stars in Genshin Impact.
Interesting. Of course, we'd already seen stuff like that with Farazan and Kujosara and Goro, but none of them really brought up an entire archetype. Sure, Kujosara was a support for Raiden, but it was, you know, only one of her good teams. Goro was niche only for Ito, Farazan niche only for Wanderer and Shao, and those were kind of like, you know what you're getting into. You know you're in for an uphill battle if you're picking these characters, and it's going to be tricky.
And none of those teams are currently playable because, once again, they decided to put an elemental shield on everybody, and good luck breaking an elemental shield with an arrow team. You might as well just be like, all right, I'm actually out.
Not the case with Chevreuse.
Sorry, Anemo.
Chevreuse made it so that if you wanted to play Raiden, DPS Raiden, Hyper Yai, Hyper any Electro character, a bunch of Pyro characters,
Instead of reworking the Pyro plus Electro reaction called Overload and making it not a piece of shit, they required you to pull a C6 4-star character to make it not a piece of shit. And you also you can only build a 3-person team. She is the Overload rework. Much like how Anefa is the fucking, what is it? What is it called? Electro Charge? Yeah, she's the Electro Charge rework. And then Lauma's the Dendro rework.
Yeah, that if you wanted to play them, you're going to have to wish for Chevreuse. Interesting. But in general, the good supports stayed the good supports all the way even into early Natlan. And when Shalona released, it looked like she was going to be the second coming of Kazuha. It looked like that she was going to be the next universal support because she is an upgrade to Kazuha for almost all of the teams that he was on. Basically all of them. And she heals, and she opened up new teams, and she worked for Geo, and her res shred lasts longer, and she's more flexible with artifact sets.
Okay, so she's just power creep for certain.
But she was not the next universal support. Yes, she is very good, and yes, she is somewhat universal, and yes, she still works with the best character in the game, Moika. But can you really say she's the universal support anymore when Veresa doesn't want her? She'd rather use Overload in every scenario, unless sometimes you want to use Electrocharge stuff. Even then, Overload can be better, Electrocharge can be better, even against Electrocharge Shilling. I won't go into that here, but even then, Shalonen's not even the best bet, it's Shanyan. And Shalonen's definitely not Skirk's best in slot. Doesn't even work together. Unlike Veresa, which at least they can cope together. Shalonen doesn't even work with Skirk. Oh.
I dare say you could have made the argument that Shalona is the best generalist because she is better than Kazuha for all the older DPS characters. But those older DPS characters don't do enough damage to clear the endgame anymore. So, yeah, this is the thing, right? You cannot clear the endgame in Genshin Impact without the newer DPSs. Or you have one of the Giga supports for the new DPSs. For example, New Valette, Brother's going to be struggling. Unless you have a Scoffier. And then you can play the Freeze New Valette team. Then he has a much better chance of clearing the endgame. Same thing with Ryosley. You got to have a Scoffier. Then, much better time clearing the endgame. And so, if you're going ahead, you're doing some Jalonen Hu Tao shit, you're probably going to have a really rough fucking time. Oh, you have Lauma Bloom now for New Valette? My bad, you're correct. Yeah, you have Lauma Bloom for the New Valette teams now. So it's like, okay, you can either go for the Freeze alternative, or you can go for the Dendro alternative. But the main thing is, go pull a new character.
Doesn't work with Lauma. Oh, doesn't work with Flynn's. Oh, doesn't work with Nefer.
It wouldn't be that bad. In my honest opinion, it wouldn't be that bad at all if the Traveler was actually a member of these teams. They actually made the Traveler kit not a piece of shit. Somewhat like it is in Wuthering Waves, right? Where you can actually end up dealing or end up like using like buffing stuff like that on their end and get like some good stuff going. Unfortunately, though, yeah, there's not really any free-to-play units that slot in on any of these Genshin Impact teams and does anything at all. Yeah. I don't know a single team that the Traveler can do anything on.
Uh-oh. Your most universal broken support is not working with them. What happened to Kazuha? Do we even talk about Kazuha anymore? He's basically a for fun pull at this point. Yelan's still hanging on by a thread, but she just got power crept out of a lot of her teams by Aino. Now, if you want to get Flynn's, you need an Effa.
Wait, I'm sorry, time out. Did Aino end up power creeping Yelan? Okay.
If you want to get Skirk, you need a Scoff. Yay. If you want to...
Again, this is the meta guy, right? This is the guy that tests every single team, right? Again, I'll just play part of his fucking video for you so you know exactly what I'm talking about over here. Like, bro just uploads like fucking 10-hour shit about where is it? Ranking all the new Nilo teams. Bro's just out here fucking like testing out like 17 different comps. Like that's the stuff that I mean. And so if he's the one saying that I know power creep Yalan, I guess I'll take his word for it. But my god, that's terrible.
Want to get Flynn's, you need
after selling the skin for her too.
Llama. You cannot just pull who you like anymore as long as you pull the broken support for the region and expect things to go well. It's not that way. You need to pull for that specific pairing on top of pulling the Archon, which will be Columbina, which will be best in slot for all the Nod Cry Cat. And don't
It sounds so gay. Let me just play back the past 30 seconds again.
Now, if you want to get Flynn's, you need an Effa. If you want to get Skirk, you need a Scoffye. If you want to get Flynn's, you need Lauma. You cannot just pull who you like anymore as long as you pull the broken support for the region and expect things to go well. It's not that way. You need...
I think this is the main thing, is that a lot of people might be drawing some of the similarities over here to, naturally, some of the pairings that exist in Wuthering Waves. But I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I think that was clearly a bit of a bigger issue when characters like Zani were releasing into the game, where if you don't have Phoebe, right, you can still make her work with Spectral Rover, basically playing like a quick swap team. Nobody really wants to do that, though, or only some parts of the player base really want to do that. And of course, some people can make the whole claims about like Cartithia and Chacona, while in practice, it's like she ends up working out just fine. I think she's actually soloing some content right now because of how self-sufficient her kit is when you use certain techs. You look at some of the recent releases to Wuthering Waves, I'm not gonna lie. This unit is so standalone, it's ridiculous. This character over here is like the pinnacle of woo-wah kit design. From the perspective of, like, you could just pull her, have a more defeat, and then just go kill content. Just go destroy content. You pull this character, if you don't have Augusta, you're still actually cooking. You're still completely cooking with this unit with no Augusta on the team. She's pretty much a standalone as well. Then they both also use a 1.0 character's weapon basically perfectly. Both of them. She uses Zhang Liao's, she uses Jian's, and there's no issue at all. So it's like, it's pretty clear to me that Kuro is starting to dial back a lot on the more specific parts of the character kit design, where Zani is definitely the most egregious one of them all, but for Lova without Cantarella, still cooks, right? You just miss out on a couple of the enhanced attacks, but it's not like her enhanced attacks are like the craziest shit ever. Yes, that's a lot of motion value to miss out on, potentially more casts, but this is the thing. You end up doing like a pretty fast rotation on yourself, and you still build up that after sound. And you only miss, you still get one of these, depending on the teammate, because you have, well, every teammate has their own echo skill at a baseline. So that stuff is already there. She is not as reliant as some people might think she is. And then these two are not reliant at all. That's my take on like specificity and like paired teammates nowadays. I don't really have any issues with it based off the older character releases, based off the new character releases. And some of the older ones, it doesn't really seem like they're doing this very much anymore. This is why I call Zani one of the worst value pulls in the game.
It's not that way. You need to pull for that specific pairing on top of pulling the Archon, which will be Columbina, which will be best in slot for all the Nod Cry Cat. And don't forget, this is on top of the fact that it's a lot harder to get 4 stars. There's new good 4 stars, yes, with Yansan, but are they a free-to-play hero? How many?
You're never going to get these characters off the standard banner reliably. That's another thing that I feel like is not said enough about Wuwa. When you go ahead and you spend your standard pulls for the weapons, hopefully you're doing this, you'll just randomly get 4-star units. And chances are, it'll be like a halfway decent 4-star unit, not a pile of shit, because there's just not a lot of bad 4-star units to pull in the game. This, yeah, I don't think you're going to be getting any of the good 4 stars on the Genshin standard banner. Yeah, there's too much trash on here.
How many copies of Yansan do you have? If I didn't whale, I wouldn't have C6. How many copies of Shivers do you have? If you're a new player, do you have C6 Sing Cho? I don't think you do. But that is not all. The new Endgame Stygian Onslaught requires you to not have 1, not 2, but 3 teams. And not just 3 teams, 3 teams able to counter the random whatever bullshit mechanics that Hoyoverse decides to throw at you.
How are you doing this one as a new player? I'm going to be honest.
And yes, if you have really meta characters, they can brute force. Moika and Skirk can brute force. All three of these bosses, I don't know about this one. This one's a bit weirder. I've seen some weird Squirk brute forcing, but the top and bottom ones for sure.
Why do you say squirk? That sounds off, brother. Please don't say that again.
And it has gotten to the point that unless you are a spender or you are a meta slave, you cannot even realistically, you cannot even expect to clear Fearless 5 for most people. I think a meta slave free to play could, and pretty consistently, because you could do things like skip the DPS and just get the support. And there's a few things you can do to brute force different stuff, but man, is it rough out there. And Genshin, contrary to popular belief, has improved the pull economy. You are getting more pulls nowadays than you used to, but not even close to the degree required to get so many more characters.
What is the camera angle right now, brother man?
So what is one to do? I used to be an advocate of pulling for your favorite character and then pulling for the characters to support them, to make up that best team. Now, honestly, that's still what I recommend, actually. I really don't, and unless you really just enjoy clearing the new content and clearing the hardest content for the sake of clearing the hardest content, I wouldn't worry about it. After all, in Stygian Onslaught, if we look at the rewards, the Primos stop at hard. Menacing and Fearless don't give Primos. Yeah, you might miss out on a feather or two, but honestly, it's not the end of the world because the Primos are still there. And you're gonna have to do kind of what I had to do, because
I think it's a little bit rough to... I think this is more so the balance take that should be had. Yes, there's no Primos there closer to the end, and yes, missing out on the feather is kind of sucks. It's also just a little bit like, why are their buffs just so fucked up in the game mode? Like, the buffs are so bad to the point where it's like, literally, unless you're using the newer characters, you are having one of the worst combat experiences imaginable in the game. And so it really just feels like, yes, this shit is literally just here to showcase the newer units, and just having a function like that in the game feels icky at a baseline, where it feels close to impossible with the meta teams of a month ago, unless you have them C6.
I want to clear Dire, but I'm not going to be able to with my C0 account unless I really, really spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours working on it. It's just not going to happen. And so you've got to determine, based on your dedication to your account, based on your characters, based on how you like to play, you might just have to say, screw it. I'm going to pull for my favorites again. And
I'm just not gonna play the game. Screw it. I'm just not gonna play it. Hey, who cares about this Stygian Onslaught content? Fuck it. I'm just not gonna be able to do it unless I pay a fuck ton of money. And that's the state of it. Right? And some people, they're deciding, okay, I see the writing on the wall. They're adding all this content that I literally cannot consume unless I spend thousands of dollars on the game. I think they're gonna put in more content that I can't consume unless I spend thousands of dollars on the game. That's kind of like the worry. That's the concern, right? They've started it right now, and people feel like it's going to get worse.
And sure, and if I like a character, if I really like Flynn's, you know, I'll pull a Neffa because I want to enjoy Flynn's having a good team. I think that's a good idea. You may say I like Flynn's, but only enough to be an overworld trophy, and so I'm just gonna skip a Neffa. You might say I love meta, and I want to worship meta, and so, you know, so I'll get Moika, I'll get Skirk, maybe I'll get a Llama, maybe I'll pick up a Neffa, but I'm gonna skip the DPSs because, you know, they're not top meta. I'm gonna wait for the top meta characters and only get them.
I think the worst part about the lineups that they have is that these characters have built-in restrictions in their kit. Escoffier, for example, right? Her ability to buff freeze teams doesn't activate unless you only have cryo and hydro characters. It's not like other games like Wuwa, where it's like, or actually it is. You have Lupa over here who has that restriction, right? But the nice news about Wuwa is there's only 3 fucking characters on a team. And so having a restriction like this, where, yes, you only want other fusion characters, doesn't feel close to as bad because you're not losing right? You don't have a 4th team slot to fill. And that actually makes these restrictions feel way less restrictive because it's just, I mean, think about it this way. Imagine having to have 4 fusion characters. There's like there's barely enough to even have 4 fusion characters. And you end up with fucking like role overload where you have like too many sub DPSs or too many DPSs. And that's the thing, right? The 3-person team makes these sort of like meta arguments and all of that feel inherently less predatory and less restrictive because you don't feel like you need 4 limited pulls to get the team going. At most, it's 3. And in some situations, it's 2 because you have one of the pieces for free, like Arrow Rover over here. And that's where the MC actually not being a piece of shit can be handy as well. Because frankly, right, yes, this is a more affordable team from like a limited perspective because it uses Arrow Rover as one of the 3 slots. And so you only need 2 others. But this character, oh god.
Maybe you want to do that. But more than ever, it's a choose your own adventure. Maybe you want to go for Veresa and look for those sweet Chevrus and 4-star and Yansan Gamba and hope that you can get C6 of each of them or you lose 10k DPS per or more, you know? Maybe you want to go Chaska and just...
So Veresa and her optimal team is looking for Yansan C6 as well as Chevrus C6 to compete at the same level of the other teams. That's rough.
Just skip a bunch of DPSs and get her vertical investment because that's the other thing. C1s and weapons have gotten more and more powerful over time that bait you into spending more. Genshin is much more of a choose your own adventure than it's ever been. And not just in terms of, not in terms of the game, but in terms of the pull plan. There's no clear path. It used to be pick up a Kazuha and then get whoever and you can basically win. Now it's like there's different ways to win. There's different things to go for. Do you want to build your team? Do you want to build for meta? Do you want to go for vertical? Do you want to go for horizontal? Do you want to get supports? Do you want to get a DPS and make them strong with their supports? Or do you want to just get the supports so that you can clear the type checks? Or
I could see a potential future, right, for Wuthering Waves to have a similar sort of issue. But this is the thing. I think we're currently already living in that potential future, where we do have specifically tailored teams, right? Where there's an upgrade to Shorekeeper. But the thing is that the teams that are replacing Shorekeeper, right, with another character that more fits like a mono lineup, right? Imagine, for the Frolova team, where you have Cantarella as well as Rosia, you put in a Shorekeeper instead of the Rosia. The damage difference between the teams is so small that you don't ever feel the need to pull Rosia for this lineup. For example, this team over here, oh, she's cooked, is almost exactly the same performance-wise to this team. This is the fully fleshed out lineup, right? This is the one that's the most Giga Premium of them all. But you always have this alternative available. Same exact thing with the fusion lineup, where you can put like a mix and matching of all the fusion characters. This team is actually really bad. I don't suggest this one. But you can also run stuff like this, and that's not much of a concern at all. You can also run stuff like this, and it's not really a concern at all. The content hasn't gotten to a level where you need Lupa in this team to clear. You can always just use another alternative instead. And yes, it'll be lower damage, but not to the degree of lower damage where the other teams feel unplayable. And that's the thing. I pray that these lineups like these, or alternatively, right, a lineup like this, I think we're getting close to like the damage ceiling of the game. Hopefully, for the next couple of years. Because these are the most premium that a team can get. I hope that these lineups that are specifically tailored around the 3 units working together to this high of a degree and boosting an elemental damage of some type, or an attribute damage of some type, I hope that this is the ceiling. Because you have 3 limited characters with 3 signatures, blah, 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 all of that. Which can be, right, a bit of a upgrade compared to maybe running something a little bit more budget. Maybe compared to running like a generalist support like this. And so we'll see if there's another mono team. We'll see if there's another lineup that causes damage ceilings to extend further than these 2 that are currently in the game. And then we'll start, and then I'll have some significant concerns to raise, right? But roughly, these lineups are all doing like the same amount of damage. They're stronger than the Shorekeeper alternatives, but that's because Shorekeeper is a pure generalist character that works on way more teams than a Loop or a Chacona would. I think that this is where we're going to sort of sit in damage for a while, and Curl's just going to start working on more of the attributes, maybe more of the status effects, so on and so forth, all of that. But if the ceiling gets raised further than these ones, don't worry. We'll talk about it, because that's what happened in this game, and boy, oh boy, there's a lot of unplayable units right now.
Or you want to say, screw the type checks, and I'll just focus on my IFA, or whatever, or your Arlecchino. So that's what I think. If you're having trouble deciding who to pull for, join me on stream, join our Discord server. The help is really, really good. By the way, check out our podcast, subscribe down below. And if you don't want to do any of that, that is totally fine.
To be fair, though, for Genshin Impact, and it becoming this difficult to, like, plan your pulls or this difficult to decide who to pull, you want to know who that's great for? This guy. Maybe that's why he's saying the game is in the best state it's ever been, because his content is probably in some of the best state that it's ever been. Because everyone's like, what the fuck do I do? How do I navigate this? Oh my gosh, my account is so weak because of all the stuff that's happened. What do I do, Mr. Jello Impact? Please. He's probably getting a lot of those questions right now because the game's balance is so bad.
Hopefully this video is helpful for you. I hope that no one felt like I was being too negative here. I don't actually feel like I'm criticizing. I'm just being factual, I will see when this video comes out what the response is. I wasn't trying to be negative. I was literally just trying to say it how it is. So,
I mean, that's the thing, right? He's stating the facts about the game, but the current state of the game is so unfortunate that it comes off as like doom posting. And that's kind of like the situation over here, is that just simply stating the facts about what happened, I don't even think he talked about how he felt. It speaks volumes about the state of the game if stating those facts is enough to be considered doom posting.
Hopefully people took it that way, because that's the way it was, and that's the way it is. And I'm just going to always call it how I see it, and I want people to be hip on
why did he just decide in the last 2 minutes of the video to change his camera position?
Going on, there's new players, you got to know what's going on. But that being said, I still think the game is fine, and it's fun and enjoyable. So let me know your thoughts, and if you don't want to do any of that stuff I said that you should do, don't worry about it. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
All right, so yeah, I'm going to be real over here. I think he's spitting. I think it's absolutely clear that the state of Genshin Impact, and once again, it's entirely based off the idea of damage ceilings getting raised in the game, following the Mavuika Sitlali Jalonen team just demolishing all the content in the game, doing 50% more damage than everything else. With damage increases like that at a baseline, the entire meta of the game starts shifting, right? And they've accompanied that shift with hyper-tailored team compositions. And those hyper-tailored teams end up doing so much more damage than every other lineup that the game has had before that, well, you really just have actually a lot of for-fun pulls, like he was just talking about, that are literally useless and don't contribute to your account. And the thing is, Wuthering Waves had the potential to go there, but it isn't there. With their triple mono fusion, their mono arrow teams, all of that stuff. They do more damage, for certain, but they haven't thrown balance out the fucking window like how these units have taken Genshin Impact and thrown that shit out the window. So, yeah, I think this is like a good case study to see what can happen to a game when there's unmitigated levels of power creep, and this was extremely informative. So yeah, not W Genshin Impact, W Jello Impact for the fact reveal over here. Let me know what you all thought, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.